Okay, here are the questions I'm going to try to cover today. How was city busting viewed and done before and during World War II? If you don't understand this, you're not going to understand what the revolution of yield was about and why we dropped the bomb. There was, at least subconsciously, a real set of arguments for doing it. It's rooted in history, not technology, primarily. The nuclear weapons revolution, how militarily significant was it initially, and why did we think, after we got fission, which was a 1,000-fold increase in yield over conventional munition, we needed to keep going? So it was 1 million, yeah? Precision guidance. How, this is being able to hit targets by putting your iPhone on the front of a missile, basically, and putting it on a GPS setting, something like that. How does that revolution constitute a counter-revolution? How has it affected what we think nuclear weapons should be used for now, which is different than what initially, and how many and how big they are now? Finally, city busting, which got us into this, is its morality still an issue today? You can tell by the tone of my voice, the question, and the article. The answer is yes. Okay, let's get into this. Oh, I didn't mention it, but I suppose I have to do an apologia for history. They say history is for chumps. It isn't. I'm a big fan of history. If you're here within the Beltway, as I explained just 3 weeks ago to my alma mater at the University of Chicago, it isn't about numbers, it's about stories, narratives. If you can get people to enjoy your story, it can be dead wrong and everyone will follow you right off a cliff. I think everyone knows somehow, if they've been in Washington for any amount of time, what I'm talking about. History's like that too. If you want to get someone to do something with regard to the future, you have to convince them where they are. And the way you do that is you tell them how they got to where they are. It is not an accident that the people like Mao, Churchill, Stalin, all wanted to control the narrative of the history they were involved in. In the case of Churchill, he wrote it, literally. And as Lenin would say, this too was no accident. There was a purpose. Okay. Why we're going to go over history. You can't understand how you are going to be pushed around by other people if you don't have a cut of your own on the history that led you to the position you're at and the problems you currently have. So it's not for chumps, it's for people who are self-aware. Okay. How do we think about war and city busting, which is basically, I want to make you understand what city busting is. It's consciously going out and seeing how many people you can kill in a city center. All right? It's kind of like murder on a large scale. A very unpleasant set of words. But you're doing it, you believe, for military purposes. Well, the first thing to recognize is that until modernity, targeting cities was actually frowned upon by people who wrote about military science. That does not mean that we didn't, in fact, through desperation, revenge, and brutality, enjoy going after cities. It's just that it was not something that was condoned by people who were reflective and wrote about war. Here's a good example, I think one of the best examples of someone who's thoughtful about these things and useful for anyone. Is anybody here concerned about East Asia or China? Any show of hands? 1, 2, 3. Well, you might want to read this book again, like every night. They do. How many people know that Sun Tzu, The Art of War, without even looking up there, the first thing that they always suggest to be able to win is what? Come on, don't be shy. I know some of you are ringers. You know what the answer is. How do you win, ideally, according to Sun Tzu?
By not fighting.
By not fighting, but let's carry it all the way through. And you do that by cracking into the mind of your adversary so that they give up because you've shown them that their plan of attack won't work. So you might as well not start. It's bloodless victory. If you want to understand the best of American strategy or anyone else's strategy, that's it. Now, everybody who studies Sun Tzu loves telling you that one thing. They don't read the rest of it, though. They should. The rest of it easily as interesting as the first point. The next best thing is to disrupt alliances by diplomacy. Now, why is that important to us? It's important to us because, strictly speaking, if you're a lawyer, any lawyers here? Thank you. I'm glad you're here. You can't really have a, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Two. Okay. You can't really have a serious enemy in the sense of prosecution unless you're at war. Strictly speaking. I mean, we have stretched this by having wars on terror and, I don't know, wars on poverty and all. But really, strictly speaking, you've got to be in a state of war to have really solid enemies. We're not. That's good news, by the way. So it's very hard to have a strategy without a clear enemy. You have what's known as contingency plans to deal with an adversary. I mean, we dress this up. But what do we clearly have? Well, we do have alliances, and we have allies. His point would be, we need to spend, given our situation, a lot of time on point number 2, which no one remembers he ever made. Don't let your potential adversary break up your alliances. Next best thing is to attack the army. Think of Sherman, not Sherman, excuse me, think of Grant. He was very good at chewing up armies. That's how he won the Civil War, basically. And the very worst thing is to attack cities. I like this stuff. This is very good. However, for most of the period from there to this point, Sherman's march to the sea in the Civil War, military science did not condone or really push as an argument, go for the city centers, kill as many people as you can. Sherman's march to the sea didn't argue that, but he did argue that destroying parts of a city made sense. Now, this campaign of his to take Atlanta went on for many, many months. Once he took over, he had to move on to his next objective. And before he did, he destroyed 30% of the city. But what most people don't remember, because all they remember is some movie where, you know, Atlanta's burning or something, is what he burned. He did not go after people's homes. He did not burn any hospitals. He did not burn any churches. The 30% he destroyed were the rail lines, the things that would help support the Confederate military. And he was very careful to avoid as much as possible destroying the civilians' capital goods. In fact, when he left on his way to Savannah, he told his troops, you can take the cattle, you can take the crops, but do not destroy the capital value, the farm implements, or the homes if they cooperate, That was demoralizing enough, I gotta believe. But it was very effective. Has anybody here been to Savannah? Pretty neat place. The reason it's neat is it wasn't bombed. It is basically a pre-Civil War town. And the reason why is because of Sherman. By the time he got to Savannah, the Confederates put up a little bit of a fight, then they ran, and the mayor of the city, I'd like to think he was Italian, He was Italian in spirit. He was civilized. He immediately went out with the key to the city and said, here. The city was saved. That is the first time there was an argument and a logic associated with how you go about leveraging attacking cities. And this is, I believe, a very civilized approach. We are going to go quite a distance away from this level of civilization, but this is where it begins.